Okay, now we're recording. All right, welcome to our Sunday night Sparta Nation team call. Thank you so much for being on here tonight. We have an amazing guest speaker tonight in Katy Ursta, who's one of the best storytellers, one of the best speakers, and most importantly, one of the best humans that I know. You might know her from Beachbody. You might know her from her new podcast and her new site, the Chic site. There's a lot of ways that you might know Katy, but if you haven't known her before, you're going to be so glad that you're meeting her tonight, and you're going to be glad that you know her from this point on, because she's amazing and she has an amazing story. Before we get into that, I wanted to share with you, a few of us have been reading this book, the new Marie Forleo book, Everything is Figure Outable, which is, by the way, the most awesome mantra for business and life. From this point on, this is what you should be saying: everything is figure outable. But the reason I bring this up is because as we've been reading this book this week, I've got a small group of coaches and we're reading it together. One action item that I suggested to them along with this book is, go to the podcast section, go to the podcast app and start seeking out podcasts that maybe Marie is on, not just hers. She has her own podcast, but other podcast interviews that she might be on, because that is taking agency over your own learning. Learning doesn't just stop with, let me read the book and now I'm done. Learning continues with, let me find this podcast. Let me find this interview. Is she on this website? Learning continues as we absorb information from all kinds of sources, but most importantly, as we take agency to go out and find that. So it's one thing for a coach to say, hey, I want you to read a book. Awesome. It's another for you to take that next step and really step into your own leadership of your business and of your life for your own learning. I read it, or I heard a statistic recently. I'm not even going to quote it because I won't get it right, but how many adults have read no books since high school? And I cried a little bit, especially as a former high school English teacher. I cried a little bit. Not just because they're not reading a book, but just because to me that means they've stopped learning. They stopped when they graduated high school. They stopped when they graduated college, and they just thought learning was the textbook stuff. But learning can happen every single day. Learning can happen if you take a group exercise class and the way that teacher cues. Learning can happen when you're at church. Learning can happen in a book. It can happen in a podcast. It can happen in a conversation. The point is, learning doesn't just stop at high school or in college or with a book. Take agency over your own learning. Seek out ways that learning speaks to you, because maybe the book speaks to you, or maybe the audio version of the book speaks to you, or maybe listening to her on a podcast speaks to you, or maybe watching her video. She's got videos called Marie TV. That style of learning doesn't appeal to me. I've never even watched it, but I bet there are people that it will appeal to. Step into your learning. Take ownership over your learning. Find the ways of learning that appeal to you, that inspire you, that challenge you, and just keep seeking it out. I often find my next book from a recommendation from someone else. I've listened to an interview. I've listened to someone do a podcast, and they're recommending a book, and I'm seeking that next book out. The other way I find books is when Carl Deichler recommends a book. If Carl Deichler recommends a book, I am literally on Amazon before he's finished his sentence, ordering the book and the Audible and any other thing that I can find. Because if the CEO of a billion-dollar company is recommending a book, I'm finding it. And then I'm looking for interviews with that person. I'm looking for podcasts with that person. I'm paying attention to what successful people are recommending, and I'm trying to find all the sources of that and put it in my life. And that's the way you can become not just a successful coach. That's awesome. But how about we make our goal to be a successful human? Because by default, you'll probably build a really successful business. But being a successful human, that's really the end game here. So let's get into someone who is a very successful human and who also has a podcast, so you can learn from her in all kinds of different ways. Katy Ursta, I feel like we've known each other forever. We had a really great conversation on the ship in March, like a random I was wearing my glasses trying to hide from people because contact wasn't in, and we were talking about fitness and nutrition. And Katy's one of those people that I don't get to talk to often enough, and every time I do, I walk away just feeling better and like I should be talking to her more. I think she's that awesome, and I think you're going to feel the same way tonight. So I'm going to mute myself, Katy, and y'all remember, put speaker view on. You want Katy to be big, and we'll get rid of the Brady Bunch. And I'm going to let you share your story so that and honor how much, whatever you want to share of that, and then we'll dive in.
That sounds good. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. It really was So wonderful to be on that cruise ship. And it was a very quiet area. And we had a really, really great conversation about everything from fitness, nutrition to business and just keeping it fresh. So first, before we get into anything, she was talking about books, and I'm actually going to recommend one to you. It's actually not out yet, but Tanya, the author's name is Tanya Dalton, and you can pre-order it, I'm sure, on Amazon, but it is called The Joy of Missing Out. And what I love about Tanya, we actually interviewed her for a podcast that's coming up, but what I love about her is she is one of the only female authors to dive into time management. So many authors are males, and she comes at it from the perspective of being a mom, being a wife, being a CEO, and having all of these different hats to wear. And I feel like she was just incredibly, incredibly relatable. But she talks about, one thing she talks about is just burning down the to-do list, like just really how we glorify this idea of being busy when we really should be glorifying priority and the things that matter most. So again, this is called The Joy of Missing Out, and I absolutely love this book. So I wanted to kind of put that plug in there because it really is great. And I guess I'm going to just share a little bit of my heart with you. I didn't really rehearse this, but I did kind of take some notes because I really do want to hit a few solid spots, especially as we get into the final quarter of the month, which is so crazy to think about. And I know that right now there's probably one of two things that is maybe happening in your head. You're like, okay, I think I can. And so you're going for those goals. Or it's, I'm going to Homer Simpson GIF this. I don't know if you know which one I'm talking about. It's where he slowly backs himself into the bush as if he's like disappearing a little bit. And so there tends to not be a lot of in between. It tends to be either like full steam ahead or slowly back off and wait until that January arrives, because in January, we're all going to go hard. And I thought to really kind of talk about the mindset of what it's going to take to make sure that we're moving forward. I want to just share a little bit of a story with you about my journey as a coach. So I have been in this business for over 7 years now, which is incredible to think about. But when I had started, I was at the end of the school year, and my big vision for what I wanted this business to be was to help my husband and I make enough money so I could walk into the grocery store and not have to cross my fingers to actually get the groceries paid for. To me, that was the I have arrived. That was the I am successful as a coach. That was the, can you just imagine not having to worry about, do I have enough for milk and for diapers and all of the little things, or do I have to whip out my credit card and charge something else? And so I had this very, very clear definition of what success was at that time. And that's what I was working towards. And as I got more into the business, I started to see what other people were doing. And although my vision for what the business could do for me was big, I was good with where I was at. I was good with where I was starting. So watching other people succeed and create their own definitions of success made me sort of go, okay, but is my success enough? And so began when Katy started pushing towards various goals and not knowing why am I doing this? So back in 2014, I was 2 years into my business. I was one of those bullets that was just moving full steam ahead. I was doing the thing. I was hitting the points. I was getting the points. I was like a wrecking ball. I don't even know how else to describe it aside from I was just chugging, burning. And then I was diagnosed with stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma. And that is a type of cancer. I was on an extended maternity leave. I had just lost my medical insurance. And so my husband and I looked at this, and all of a sudden all that burning and churning and that full steam ahead was no longer just to create an income. There was a bigger purpose behind that paycheck. So I started knowing that although I was going to be battling cancer, I was going to be sick, I was not going to look like the vision of health and fitness. I didn't have another choice. And so I went in with it as there is no plan B. This is the plan A, and this is the plan that is going to work. And in 2014, that was the year my business grew over 300%. And I share that not to brag, because what I'm going to share next is that life is going to happen. I share that because although that was a part of my story, it wasn't where it ended. And so in 2014, I had battled cancer. And in 2015, I started to continue to work towards goals. I went 10-star in my business center. I think I went 2 or 3-star in another business center. And I was just going again. And there I found myself again, churning and churning and churning. And this time it was interesting because a lot of the team that I had built was no longer really interested in coaching. And beside just having to sit back and deal with the fact that, oh my God, I had cancer, because I don't think I ever really fully embraced that at the time, I was seeing everybody who was my tribe at the time that I had battled cancer slowly Homer Simpson the business. And in turn, it felt like they were Homer Simpsoning Katy without cancer. And so there was a whole feeling of like, what am I doing? Like, what is this business? Like, why am I here? Like, why am I in Beachbody? Like, do I matter? Now that I don't have cancer, does my story still matter? Is it still valid? Can I still make an impact? And so I wrestled with all of this, right? I wrestled with like life post-cancer, and I wrestled with watching my income like just plummet. And then I wrestled with these relationships of people who I thought were my lifers who weren't. And I wrestled with this guilt of survivorship while I was watching people that I knew and had battled with pass away. So there was a lot. And there was this whole mindset of, I need to make Beachbody work, but I need to find a way for it to work for me and for me in my life so that I feel successful at it. Because I really started to find that the business, it takes a lot of heart, it takes a lot of grit, and it takes a lot of humility too. And I know that people who have these qualities can absolutely rock this business, but they cannot rock the business if they don't really know why they're actually doing it for themselves. So before I dive into a couple of tips and strategies and kind of how this story ended, I want you to think about where you are in your business, what you're working towards. And then I want you to also think about, why am I working towards these things? Is it because my upline, she's so successful and I want to do that? Or are you thinking about those bills that are sitting on the counter right now in the kitchen and you're just concerned that you won't be able to get them paid for? Or are you doing it because you were that woman who lost 100 pounds and you know that this is the only way that you're going to stay accountable for those 100 pounds to stay off? Whatever it is that you are working towards, and I don't care if it's business or fitness or whatever it is, this is 100% applicable. So I have been listening to a podcast, and it's Jim Fortin is his name. I think it's Fortin. And I'm going to give the full disclosure that Jim Fortin is pretty dry. And I think he's a therapist, and he created this podcast that basically goes over the psychology behind why we do the things we do. And one of the things in one of the first podcasts he talks about is we have this tendency to want to do all of the things. And so we put these things, these action items on a list, and we're like, check, 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 check. Okay, why am I not where I want to be? And we kind of look back and we're like, oh my God, I should be so much further along than I really am. And Jim says, no. Before you do any of the items that you check off the list, you have to ask yourself, who do I have to be for these things to happen? Because if we're only really focused on the surface level of action, we don't get to the root of why those actions actually matter. And I know that we all know how much personal development matters, right? We've been, you guys know that Julie loves it, and you know she's preaching to you about it because it is about the roots. Before you get into the do, who do you have to be in order for those things to feel really natural, for those things to feel good, for you to feel good about your business? You have to focus on who you need to be or who you need to become to be successful in the business. So let's break that down. I firmly believe that in 2016, when I was starting to see my business shift and I was starting to see this sort of slide in a bad direction, in a negative direction, and I saw the change in Beachbody on Demand. And if you weren't there in 2016, and I realize some of us might not be, it was just one of those things where you constantly went, is it me? Like, is it me? Like, or is this normal? And really, truly, there were so many things that were kind of happening. But I remember thinking, okay, what do I have control over? What do I have to do in order to be successful? But I also remember thinking, who do I have to become to look back at this and be able to tell this story later? And one of the things that I started doing was getting really, really clear about my business activities. So here's the deal. When we talk about things not working, when we talk about like being, I should be further along, I should have more income, I should have more to show for it, my question is always, well, why do you think that? Like, what is the proof that you should be further along? Like, what is the evidence that you should be further along? And so in 2016, for me, I didn't know. I was like, I don't know why, but I know that other people are further along, and I know that people have been in this business, and I know that I'm posting, just as well. And I know that I'm connecting with my people, and I know that I have these orders go through. And I was so convinced that I should be further along, but I didn't really have the evidence. So tip number one is all about tracking. It's so boring to even talk about because it's not very interesting. But here's why tracking matters. Business or fitness, it's applicable to either one. Tracking reveals your trends. Your trends are going to show you some type of truth. And your truth, once you nail that, is where you can start to create change. So tracking is going to reveal certain trends in your business, in your fitness, in your nutrition. Your trends are going to reveal some type of truth. And the truth is the only way you can make a lasting change. So when I started to notice this, I was like, all right, I need to get out my business activity tracker, right? And I would do it, and then I would be inconsistent with it. And I would do it again, and I would be inconsistent with it, or I wouldn't do my follow-ups. And I couldn't lie to myself. The evidence, the proof was right in front of me. I couldn't get myself to go around it. There was no way to escape it. Like the truth was, I wasn't doing the things that I needed to do to be successful. And so therefore, I wasn't who I needed to be, because the person I needed to be would be taking action. The person I needed to be for my team to be successful, the person I needed to be would be doing the things and be able to take that tracker and say, hey team, this is what I did. By the way, this is the objection that I got. Oh, and by the way, that follow-up that I had 6 months ago, and I have evidence that I talked to this girl, she finally committed and said yes. Tracking is going to reveal trends. Trends is going to give you some type of truth, and the truth is ultimately what's going to set you free. And just another example, and I actually use this with my challengers. This was a few years ago. I went on a retreat with my leaders, and I was having a really great conversation with one of the coaches, and her name's Rachel, and she's a runner, and she's in really, really great shape. And we just got into this conversation about how she used to have this really, really bad habit. And the bad habit would be, they were really broke. And so as a way of, instead of paying babysitters when they came to take care of her kids, she would make them like treats. She would make them like brownies, or she would make them something. And she was like, I would always eat, half of the batter. And she talked about like this mindless habit she had of doing something that was impeding like her results. So when I was talking to her, I said, you know, it's so funny you say that, because I was thinking about how I work most nights, and I go to bed around 10 o'clock. And before I go to bed, I always go to the snack cabinet. And she said, well, Katie, why do you go to the snack cabinet? And I was like, you know, I'm not really hungry, but I know that at 10 o'clock at night, I am so proud of myself for like taking action or having a good conversation or closing a sale, that I would go to the snack cabinet at night. And I think I go there because it's like a little like pat on the back. It's a little reward. And like, I just get to snack on something because it's like this small, really like enjoyable moment that I get with like the chocolate chips or, you know, the bar, the kids' Cheetos or something. And no one's there to tell me I can't because everybody's in bed. And it was that conversation that she said, you know, well, do you track it? This was before 2B Mindset. This was before the days of the tracker. And I said, you know, I just never realized I did it. So my question for you is, what are your trends? So if you really took your tracker for the week, if you said to yourself, I am going to track my nutrition for the week, notes, I am then also going to track my business for an entire week, what are you going to notice? And I guarantee you're going to notice something. But I don't care about what you notice. I don't really care about that. What I care about is what's the truth behind the trend. So for example, let's say that you are, you know, you're looking at your business and you notice that on Fridays, you want to do all of your follow-ups, but Friday comes around and you don't do any of them. Why? Why don't you do them? What is the reason that you know you have to follow up with X, Y, and Z because it's Friday, it's payday, and you know you have a better shot of them saying yes on payday, and then you don't do it? And you can say, well, I ran out of time. Or you can say, you know, I forgot. But the truth is, when you start to see that trend, you have to look yourself in the mirror and go, okay, well, why? And I don't get mad about it. That's the key. You can't get mad about your truths. Just allow your truths to reveal the change that you can make. And so I say this to all my challengers. I say this to people in the business. I say this to my team. You know, if you don't like where you are, what are you doing that you can change? And when they're like, well, I don't know, I just should be further along, I'm sending out these invitations. Okay, let me see. Because if I don't have evidence, I can't give you advice. It's the same with our challengers. It's the same with our organization. Another piece of advice, right? Your challengers are like, this program doesn't work. I am not getting results. Okay, Susie, I understand you're not getting results. Show me why. Well, what do you mean why? I'm doing the workouts. Okay, but show me your nutrition. Well, how? Well, show me. I want you to track. I don't care what new program they're following. Track your food. And here's what happens. They reveal the truth. And usually in that truth is the 10 o'clock at night snack cabinet, when they were getting their kids' lunches ready and they're like wolfing down the goldfish. When they eat dinner and they're like, I'll have 2 or 3 or 4 pieces of bread, or they forgot to say, oh my gosh, I had 3 glasses of wine, that I forgot about. The program isn't broken. Beachbody isn't broken. It's not oversaturated. There's nothing like that exists. What happens is we are not doing something that's allowing us to get to where we want to be. And the reason we aren't doing it is because there's a block between the person who we are and the person that we want to become. The reason we aren't doing it, it's not about being unable to take action. We all have the same 24 hours in a day, but it's not because we don't want to take action. It's because there's a barrier in between who we are now and who we believe we can become through this process. So really getting nitty gritty with your tracker. And I'm talking business and I'm talking fitness. If you're a little off with your fitness right now, right? So maybe you're doing morning meltdown or you're getting ready to do the work. What would it look like if you just got really, really honest with yourself and said, okay, I'm going to track this and I'm really going to focus on what my truth is. And you move forward from there. The second type of tracking that has made all of the difference in my business is tracking my social media. So this is a skill, and I don't necessarily think that everybody needs to do it on all accounts, Facebook and Instagram, but I do think you should focus on one. Because just like you track your business, when you track your social media, because you're on there for a purpose, you start to notice certain trends in your social media as well. You start to allow your audience to speak to you based on the way that they're engaging with you. When you kind of take a step back and look at your social media, you can start to pinpoint certain themes from your posts that your audience is like, I like that. I want more of that. And then once you get that part of it, you can start speaking to that a little bit more. I'm going to tell you a little story that happened this year. And I think like Julie, I know you were high school English, right? So I was middle school reading. And one of the things that I love doing with middle schoolers is they would come in, they were in 7th grade, and they were in this really awkward stage of childhood to like being ready to become an adult. And they were really confused with their identity, and they were really trying to understand the world around them, but they wanted to be cool and be an adult and still be accepted. It was all the raging hormones in the world, right? And they would come into my classroom, and I had this amazing challenge of having these kids fall in love with literature. And so one of the books that they read was Agatha Christie's, And Then There Were None. And I loved it because all these people went onto the island and they were murdered one by one. And the kids were like, I can't believe I'm reading this. And I'm like, I know, it's awesome. And then I would trick them into believing who the actual killer was. And it was so much fun. But here's the deal. They would fall in love with literature because the themes were universal, because the struggles and the characters they connected with. In no way are we different than those middle school kids. We crave connection. People are on social media. They are more disconnected from the world around them. And the one thing they are craving is to feel heard and that they can connect to other people around them. My question for you is, are you connecting? Are you truly building connection? So let me share that earlier this year, I had a post that went viral. And the post was just about rooting for other people to win, and that there's room for all of us to be successful. And the picture was of a bunch of girls, and we were actually on the Success Club trip, and we were all standing with our backs, and you saw our butts, and they were really sandy. It was like on the beach, and it ended up doing really well. And so me being the middle school teacher, I was like, okay, Moses, like, let's figure out why this did well. Let's figure this out. And so I sat down, and I don't know if you guys can see, I actually took these papers, big papers, and I just wrote it all out. And I was like, okay, why did this do well? Why did this do well? And I wrote in big paper, I wrote, this post is a reflection of many posts that did okay, but I needed to clarify the message. And so I went and I scrolled and I saw, I've been saying this over and over and over for months, for years. I have been talking about her success is not my failure. There is room at the table for all of us to win. And I will not tolerate other women speaking ill of others. I will be that girl who stands up and be like, not at my table. So when I thought about this post, I was like, to connect with my audience, need to take that message and keep putting it out there. And then in between it, I'm jabbing out what I do as a coach. I'm jabbing out what I do as in terms of my business, in terms of my fitness. And weaved in all of those posts is this idea of being imperfect, this idea of just embracing who I am, this idea of just, I love my tribe, that everybody can sit at this table. So when I have that one post that does well, I analyze it and I get really gritty with it and I figure out why. So my challenge for you is to go into your social media and find the universal theme. Why did a post do really well? What did you say in that post that resonated with your audience? And sometimes it's the picture, sometimes it's the meme, but if the meme is about doing laundry and not separating the colors, there's still something about the people who are liking that type of post. And then what else I'll notice is if it's a good post, I'm not just commenting on other people's comments. I know that I'm doing my job when people are commenting and they're engaging with one another, because that's when you start to create a community. Create the community before you do the challenge group. Create the community because they just become your lifers. They become your challengers. This takes time, a lot of time. I work really hard in creating a page that feels very authentic to who I am, but also a place where people feel safe to go, and they're going to hear my message, and they're going to be like, she's my person, or she's not my person at all, and I'm going to get out of here right now. So ask yourself, is my content showing some type of universal theme? And how can I take that big theme and then create it into quality content? The other thing that's helped a lot with social media and just growing like likes and follows and engagement is collaboration. And by collaboration, that means if you are an introvert, and if you are kind of living in your Beachbody bubble, and I say this with so much love, we are going to network outside of Beachbody in a very fun and powerful way. So what I started to do was I looked for other people that I could collaborate with who were similar and had a similar universal theme. So I started looking for other women who would talk about like making room for other women at the table, like not talking smack on other women, because it's true. It's like it's a weird adult thing that women do. And so I started finding other people to collaborate with. And I would take their content and I would look at it and I would share it on my stories. And I would say, you've got to follow this page. This person is so awesome. And I would shout that person out. And a lot of times I would get a direct message from somebody who just got shouted out on my page. And they were like, hey, that was really nice of you. Thank you so much. And guess what I did? I opened the door for conversation, because then I'm like, you know what? I just really love your vibe. I love what you're doing. Thank you so much for letting me share your content. Hey, I did this post, and I'll scroll down. It might be a month ago. Be like, I think this would be great on your page. Feel free to use it if you want. And boom, all of a sudden these collaborations start happening because I have initiated it. So when people talk about, do I have to hire someone to build my social media? No, you really don't. You can build an authentic following, but it's that gritty work that takes time, because you have to go out and do. Another example of a collaboration, the other day I was sitting downstairs, and my boys absolutely love the band Shinedown. And there's this one song that they sing, it's called Get Up. And my son Nick he fell in love with it like when I think he had lost a hockey game, and he was just really upset because the coach, I don't think the coach was playing him, and it was just like one of those and we're at that age now. He's 9, so he's like really starting to get this part of it in sports. And my husband played that song for him. And it was just about like, I know it stinks right now, and I know it's not fun, but get up, get a move on. And I did a post in my stories, and I talked about it. I talked about my son, like just, like motivating me to want to work out. And then they featured it on their stories, like the band Shinedown featured it on their stories. My point is this: it just took a second to tag the band. I'm not saying it's going to work, but I am saying it was really easy not to do. And I just took that extra second to do it. And so I credited them. I talked about the song, and then I messaged them back and I said, thank you so much for the feature. My son and I really love your song. And that's all I said. And I never heard back. But again, guess what happened? I was featured on their page. People came back to see, well, who's Katy Ursta? And that's just one of those collaboration ideas that I know really work very, very well. The other thing, if you're running a business on social media, but not Instagram, but you're doing it more on Facebook, start featuring other memes that you love, shared content on your page, but credit them. And just message them and be like, I read your meme. I laughed so hard. I hope you don't mind. I shared it on my page. And I guarantee you, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. Especially like writers who are just up and coming. So I share this because as Beachbody coaches, a lot of times our focus is on other Beachbody coaches, and we're checking to see what is Julie doing? What is Katy doing? What is Erin doing? What is, Kelsey doing? And then we're so focused on them that we're missing out on collaboration opportunities with people who we can grow together with. And it's great to build and to create connections and to have power pods and just to work together on certain things. But when it comes to your Instagram account and you want to build your network, we've got to get outside the Beachbody bubble a little bit. And then the last type of tracking I'm just going to take a couple minutes to talk about is tracking you. Just tracking the things that seriously spark joy in what you do. Because all of that is something we need to get super curious about. So Melanie and I, we opened Chic Influencer in January of this year, and it's a company that we run out. It's not affiliated with Beachbody. It's not marketed to Beachbody at all. But we started getting questions about how do you do this? Like, how do you scale? And Melanie has this beautiful gift for strategy and marketing. And I absolutely love storytelling. And so a while back, when we were just thinking about this, we just started talking about what really do we crave? What brings us the most joy? And so I started talking about how I love writing. I just love writing. I don't love editing. I don't love all the nitty gritty of it, but I just love being creative. I love when Amazon drops off a book and it's a fiction book or a nonfiction book, and I just get to sit with it and read with it and hear these beautiful quotes that are applying to my life, and that gives me all this joy. And I knew that would be a part of Chic. And she just, she's so focused on her marketing and so strategic, and I'm laughing because it's so true. And I just remember sitting there and going this could happen. Why don't we? And we just sat there and we were whoa, what would we do with Beachbody? How would this all look? And how would this all come together? We started freaking ourselves out. And then it came down to, well, let's just take one small step in this direction. And let's just maybe focus here. And so we leaned into curiosity. So it's not about chasing these big goals and having this big vision of where you want to go, but it's just chasing curiosity. These small little nuggets of curiosity that you have and go, well, what if, And just like when I started with Beachbody, it was, what if I can really walk into this grocery store and get the bills paid for, or get the groceries paid for? And I just kept getting more curious about what that next step was. So I ask you, what are you curious about with your business? What's something that sparks joy with you now that you would like to do more of? What is it in your challenge groups where you look in your challengers and you just get so pumped up to wake up on Monday morning and just apply it? Is it writing? Is it posting? Is it connecting? Is it collaborating? Is it maybe doing trainings? Is it doing mentorships? What is that? Because when you find that little piece of joy, just keep getting curious and get better at those things. And then you just keep going. And so going back to the very beginning of the call, I said to you, it's not just about the action. And we talked about the trackers, right? We know we have to do the things, but it's about who you become through the process of doing this thing. So where your goals are now, and especially as we get into the final quarter of the year, I want you to say, who do I need to become for this goal to be achieved? How can I do this in a joyful way? How can I just keep taking action? But what is the person who has to take those daily action steps? What does she have to be? Who does she have to act like to be able for those things to really, really happen? And think about your energy. Lean into the things that give you more energy. Lean into the people who give you more energy. Spend more time there and less time on the things that drain you. And just get super intentional with your time. And I want you to know, I drew this picture, right? And I have this call to action. I don't know if you can see it, but I am not an artist. I was a middle school teacher. So everything was stick figures. And I thought about a tree. And I thought about when you look at a tree, most people pay attention to what they can see. They pay attention to the stump, and they pay attention to the end result, the beautiful, all the greenery and everything in it, right? But what we sometimes don't pay attention to is what we can't see. And that's the roots. The roots is really where we need to focus. So you can take action on your business. You can build that grand vision of where you want to go. You can see somebody else's vision and greenery and their beautiful trees and all of the things. But the truth is, if you don't get to the root of why you're here to begin with, you're never going to grow. And you're going to go back, but I should be further along than I am. No, sister. You need to focus on the root. And when you understand the root of why you're here, that's when your business starts to take off. So before you get into your tracker, before you get into looking at your social media, before you get into all of that, ask yourself that serious, gritty question of, what is it that keeps me here? Why am I here? What sparks joy? And how can I keep this thing growing? So that's all I got though, Julie. I kept it under 45. I was kind of chatty.
I'm dropping my pencil over here, dropping my mic, because I've got like 6 pages of notes that my head was down because I was furiously writing because I didn't want to miss anything. First of all, the fact that you talked about leaning into your curiosity and finding out what brings you joy is the same question that I ask them when I say, what inspires you? And it is astounding to me sometimes how many humans cannot answer that question. Women especially, because we have not given ourselves permission, or we've stopped giving ourselves permission to even know what that is.
Yeah.
So buried in to-do lists and laundry and kid thinking that as a good mom or as a good spouse, whatever that might be in our heads, we also can't be just a good human with our own goals and dreams. And when I ask women in particular that question, what inspires you? It's astounding to me and sad how many people can't answer that. And it's not that they don't have stuff that inspires them. They just haven't asked themselves that question in so long. They don't even know.
Yeah. Or they haven't wrestled with it long enough. They haven't thought about it long enough. So if people, if I sit back and say, for a long time, my passion, and I love Beachbody, and I do the Beachbody thing, but my passion is really helping people share their story. Just find a way to share their story in a way that empowers other people. And so I just kept getting curious about that. When I started, it was like, well, it totally makes sense because I'm helping people write their story of, how they lost 10 pounds, 15 pounds, 20 pounds. And then it was, how can I help people tell their story of how they are creating income for their family? And then it became, how do I start to help other people on social media, like tell a better story so that they can tell a successful story, but it makes an impact and it impacts their income as well. And it was constant curiosity. And if you're not sure what that is, track your day, right? So just like you track your business activity, if you look at your tracker right now, what are the things that you avoid doing because you hate, and what actually gets you really excited to do? And if you're saying like, I hate the follow-ups because I feel like I'm nagging people, did you enjoy the invite? Did you enjoy posting? If you enjoyed posting, maybe it's about perfecting or getting better about creating purposeful posts so that the invites don't feel as like inauthentic to you. So when you kind of say, well, what gives me the most joy? How do you do more of that? How do you get better at that so that the other things flow into that?
Because sometimes some of the stuff what brought you joy in the beginning on the very tangible surface was to not have to worry about being able to pay for your groceries. That's very joyful. But then you have to back that up and reverse engineer that and go, okay, well, what do I have to do to that joyful feeling? And while we want to spend most of our time in the stuff that brings us the joy, makes us happy, that we love, there's going to be an essence of stuff we just don't always love.
Yeah.
In getting to the greater picture of the stuff we do love. And guess what? That's life. It doesn't matter what business you're in. I didn't like grading papers, but I sure like talking about Shakespeare. So here you go. I'm going to grade the stinking paper so we can talk about Shakespeare. There's a little bit of that give and take in any business, and this would be no different than any other.
I described it to my team, and I did a training on this not too long ago, but I described it to my team like this, right? So you want to have a vision, and don't ever let anyone tell you your vision isn't big enough, because for me, the vision of like being like $1 million earner with Beachbody, well, that wasn't even like a thought. Like I really was going into that grocery store not having to worry about it. That was my big vision. But what you do is if you think about like if you're driving in a car and your hands are on like the 10 and 2 of the wheel, and you know where your destination is, like you know where you want to go. You're like, all right, I want to end the month. I want to have 5 new challengers. I want to have 5 new coaches. I want to make sure that I have enough money in the bank account that, you know, we don't have to worry about the electric bill, right? So you're like 10 and 2, right? And you know, you have the vision, it's there. What I suggest you do instead is take that vision and sort of blur it out a little bit, because your eyes, when you're driving a car, need to be right in front of you. Not on the destination of where you're going, but on the mile marker that's right in front of you. So what's the mile marker? Your mile marker are your daily activities. When people tell me they're overwhelmed, I'm like, no, you're not. You're like abundantly blessed because you have a ton of things like you have access to. You have Beachbody is above and beyond in any company that I have ever seen in terms of training and information. So when you say like, oh my God, I'm so overwhelmed and I don't even know where to start and I have to do this, we're just in the car. And all you need to do is focus on what do I need to do today, right this minute, to get to where I want to go. It's not about all of the things. It's about the one thing. And then you do that one thing. And then you do the one next thing. And then you do the one next thing and the next thing and the next thing. But you don't think about the next thing. You think about the thing that's right here, like right in front of you. And then you don't get overwhelmed. It blows my mind when I'm like, when people are like, I'm just so overwhelmed that I don't, yes, you are overwhelmed. You're just not focused on the one thing right here that's right in front of you that you can do right now to get the results that are over here.
And also you're a grown-up. Make a different decision. Yeah. Being overwhelmed is a choice. Be a grown-up and stop saying you're overwhelmed.
Yeah, and but you don't have to be. Like overwhelmed is right. Just, it's just shift your focus. Just shift your focus. Put it right here instead of like out there and all of the gap, like all of the things that you need to do, just right in front of you.
It's like when I have the girls in the car and we're Google mapping someplace and they're like, okay, you're going to go blah, 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 blah. Stop. I just need to know where I'm turning next. That's all. Do not tell me one more thing after that. And then tell me just a little bit before I need to turn. And then like, not after.
Way. Like if I have like all the directions, I'm like, holy Moses, I cannot
need all that.
Like, I'm like, I just give me one step. Give me one step. I can do one at a time.
Okay. So say the name of that podcast again.
Jim, I'm going to double check and I'm going to message it to you because I lost my phone. I have no idea where it is. So if someone takes a picture, can someone tag me on Instagram?
How are you functioning without your phone?
I don't know. I don't know because I usually don't use it during the day. So
1, 2, 3.
Yes, it was Jim Fortin, but I'm going to double check it. But what I've been doing is every morning I've just been listening to it, and it's kind of dry. Like I said, this isn't like a pump you up Tony Robbins sort of like, and it's not even like a Marie Forleo. Speaking of her, her Soulful Sunday, everything is figure outable, phenomenal too. But he just walks through the psychology behind why we struggle with hitting our goals, or why we struggle to lose weight, or why we have these fears that are really irrational. It's just a really great podcast listen.
And while you were talking about curiosity, I wrote down a book that I read it. Gosh, maybe it's been a couple years ago. I got it from Carl. He recommended it. He said it's one of those ones where he's like, I'm reading right now. And I went, I'm reading right now too. If you're reading it, I'm also reading it, called A Curious Mind by Brian Grazer. So if you want to learn more, think more about the whole idea of being curious, and he talks about having curiosity conversations. He's now a Hollywood producer, director. Super cool story, super cool book, A Curious Mind. Now, what's interesting about it is he just released a new one this week, and it's called Face to Face. And he kind of takes those conversations to the next level and talks about how we've lost the art of face-to-face communication. And that's where the most powerful communication takes place. I just started it today because I just got it on audio because it just came out last week. But his first one, A Curious Mind, talks all about leaning into curiosity. So that idea of curiosity, so great. And then his new one, Face to Face, just came out. So if you're looking for more books, Katy and I are stacking your bedside table with books tonight.
Yes, and then Post-it notes, because then you take the notes and you do the things. So.
Yes, you write them on big pieces of paper and all the things. So Katy, we will see you in a couple weeks in Arizona.
Yep.
You're so great.
I'm so excited.
So much. It's just Katy_Ursta on social media. So make sure you're taking your pictures, you're tagging, you're doing all the things, you're tagging, you're doing all that kind of stuff, and talking about how amazing Katy is. And then she'll be inundated with requests to talk, and we'll have to share her with people who aren't Beachbody people.
Perfect. Yeah, tag some people in it. So, all right, that sounds good. Thank you guys so much for your time. So appreciated. Have a great night, guys.
See you later.
Bye, guys.